So I have 3 stories that I want to share with you today. The first one is about a woman named Toni. Now, Toni is a film producer and a world traveler. She speaks eloquently, but she says she's a slow reader. A few decades ago, when Toni was about 30, she went to her gynecologist because something just wasn't feeling right. She went there, she explains everything to him, and he says, "Oh yeah, I can fix that." "Great," she says. So a few weeks later, she comes back to have a surgical procedure, and as soon as she gets there, she is given a stack of forms to fill out, which is an experience I'm sure many of us have had. She immediately feels overwhelmed, like she doesn't have time to read them, and besides, the words on the pages don't make sense to her anyway. So she just signs them. She has the procedure. On life goes. A few weeks later, she comes back for a follow-up appointment, and as the nurse is checking her in, she says to Toni, "How are you feeling since your hysterectomy?" And that's when Toni realized that the procedure she had undergone had removed one of her organs. She hadn't asked the right questions, and she just trusted her doctor to make the best decision for her. "How had I allowed someone to take part of my body," she says, "and I didn't even know it?" Then there's the story of Leah Lee. Now, Leah was the daughter of Hmong immigrants who came to the United States from Laos. The Hmong culture has some deeply held beliefs about medicine. They often turn to rituals to heal and cure people. Now, Leah had epilepsy, which meant that she would have seizures, so her US doctors prescribed her anti-seizure medication. But Leah's parents did not speak English, so they didn't understand the medicine regimens. The language barrier between Leah's parents and her doctors kept her parents from ever really understanding even what the drugs did. This led her parents and her doctors to battle over her care. Her parents elected to use those rituals instead of the medications that didn't seem to be helping her anyway. These clashes ended in tragedy when Leah suffered a devastating seizure that left her in a vegetative state at the age of 4. She stayed that way for 26 of her 30 years of life. My last story is about me. A few months ago, I went to my doctor for a routine appointment. And as I was walking through the door, the medical assistant told me I had to take a lab test. I didn't ask what it was for. To this day, I don't really know what it was for. But I did it anyway, because it just seemed easier to go along with it than to ask many questions. You know how you feel rushed when you go to the doctor's office? Even though you're the patient, it's supposed to be about you and your health. They're speaking a foreign language, and you're intimidated, and it just seems easier to go along with things than to ask questions. But sometimes it costs you. A few weeks after my appointment, I received a $2,000 bill in the mail for that lab test because my health insurance company decided it was not medically necessary for my care. I had to fight that bill for months. Now, I am a healthcare communicator. I am getting my master's degree in this very field. This is not supposed to happen to me, but it did. As I was fighting this bill, I just kept asking myself, why didn't I just ask what it was for? Why didn't I advocate for myself? Now, statistically, we know that more than 250,000 people die every year because of misdiagnosis. But we have no idea how many die because of misunderstandings. Misunderstandings are the common thread through these stories. The ability for Toni and the Lees and me and you to understand health information is called health literacy. It's just like regular literacy, like reading books, except instead of books, we're dealing with health information on medical forms and prescription bottles. Now, we can have good health literacy, or we can have poor health literacy. If you have good health literacy, that means that you can look at a prescription bottle and know that you need to take your medication twice a day with food for 2 weeks until it's completely gone. But if you are health illiterate, you may stare at that bottle and have no idea even where to begin. I'm sure some of you remember this guy. Back in 2000, Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York, but he was also diagnosed with prostate cancer. In an interview shortly after that, he said he was confused at first about his diagnosis because his doctor told him that his tests had come back positive. So Mr. Giuliani thought that meant he was cancer-free, which makes sense because in nearly any other context, positive is a good thing, right? But positive here meant he had cancer. The former mayor of New York, like many Americans, had poor health literacy. I want you to take a look at this paragraph. Just take a few moments to read it. Do you understand it? If you do, congratulations, you have good health literacy. But if you don't, it may as well look like this, right? Unless, of course, you are fluent in German. But what this paragraph is trying to say is that new and expecting mothers in the United States can have a nurse come to their home and show them how to care for their child. So why is it so hard to understand? It's because healthcare information like that is written at the 10th grade reading level and above. Probably more on the above in that part. But most of us cannot read at the 8th grade level. Understanding health information is even more difficult for people who cannot read at all, and for those who do not speak English, like the Lees. Now, I want to be really clear about something. Having poor health literacy does not mean you are stupid. You can be very, very smart, well-educated, and capable, and still be health illiterate. Because healthcare has its own language. If you don't speak the language, you can't understand it. Now, having poor health literacy can be as simple as not understanding every single word on that form you get when you go to the doctor's office. But it can also mean the difference between life and death, or a $2,000 medical bill. Now let's imagine for a minute that I have type 2 diabetes. Now this is a chronic condition that requires near constant testing of blood sugar. My doctor tells me what foods I should eat, how to check my blood sugar, how to give myself insulin. But imagine he doesn't tell me what insulin is. What if he doesn't tell me what low blood sugar means? Like most doctors today, he'll only spend a few moments with me. I don't want to waste his time, so I don't ask many questions. Besides, he's sitting there typing on his computer, barely looking at me. He's speaking really fast, and it all seems to make sense until I leave the office and realize that I have no idea what just happened. Now, I may feel overwhelmed to the point that I don't do anything to manage my diabetes, which means I'm at risk for blindness, limb amputation, and diabetic coma, which could kill me, all because I didn't know how to take care of myself. This is what poor health literacy does. Now, as I mentioned, I am a healthcare communicator, so every day I work with doctors and nurses to make sure that their messages are understandable to people and patients. But that's not really why I'm here. I'm here because poor health literacy is an epidemic. It's costing us billions of dollars every year, and it's increasing the number of people going to the emergency room. I'm here because poor health literacy is killing us. I'm also here because I have been a patient who has had to advocate for myself and my loved ones. I am here because at some point we are all patients. We are all called to be our own advocates. And I want to tell you that you can do that for yourself and your loved ones. I want to tell you how to take control of your health. Now, perhaps the best way for us to improve our health literacy is by asking questions. I know, this is not an easy thing. The doctors and nurses you meet in a hospital or clinic are smart, talented people who don't have much time. You, the patient, are intimidated, ashamed, scared to ask the stupid questions. But this is your life, your health. There are no stupid questions. Let me say that again. There are no stupid questions. You have to be bold and stand up for yourself. Interrupt when you have questions. Don't be afraid to be difficult. Don't be afraid to be the bossy patient. You have to ask questions like, why am I having this test? What does this procedure include? Will this medication interact with my other medications? Is this covered by my insurance? The minute you do that, you take control of your health. When your doctor tells you to do something, repeat it back to them. This will help them correct any misunderstandings that you have, but it will also help you begin to understand the information. Remember, doctors use these healthcare words all the time. Words like hypothyroidism and renal failure, high blood glucose levels and hypertension. They are fluent in this language. We are not. Your doctor may have no idea you're even confused. Tell them. Start the conversation. I want to give you 3 things that you can do to improve your health literacy. The first one is by asking questions. We've already gone over this. It is fundamental to understanding this difficult health information. Number 2, take a notebook. It can be as small as your pocket, or it can be a huge binder overflowing with papers. Take it with you when you go to the doctor. Write things down. The words your doctor says, the instructions she gives you, the questions you have that you didn't or were afraid to ask. Write down the questions before you go. Assume that when you get there, you will panic and forget everything you wanted to ask. Writing the questions down first will help you know where to start. But maybe that's not enough. Maybe your diagnosis is too overwhelming. Maybe it's too hard to take notes and ask questions at the same time. These are not easy things. What can we do then? We can ask for help. Number 3, take a loved one or a friend. They are your advocates. A doctor's appointment can be so full of big words that you may not even hear them. In emergencies or when hearing difficult news, you may be so absorbed by shock that you don't even hear them. In these times, having someone with you to be your eyes and ears, to ask questions and make sure you get everything you need can make all the difference. They will hear things you don't. They may think of questions you haven't even thought to ask. They can help make sure you don't leave that office without everything you need to take care of yourself. They can help you take control of your health. Now, I know firsthand how an emergency can change your understanding of even simple words. About this time last year, my grandmother, who is from Iowa, came to visit me here in Arizona, and she had a heart attack. She had never had heart problems before, so the diagnosis was a shock on top of the stress that we were already feeling. About 3 minutes after the doctor told us what was wrong with her, my grandfather turned to me and said, "Did he say heart attack?" Within 24 hours, she passed away from a heart condition that we didn't even know she had. Now, my grandfather is smart, but the emergency of that situation, the sheer shock of it, kept him from understanding the simple words heart attack. In that instance, he wasn't even the patient. He was the patient's loved one. So imagine what it is like to hear devastating news about your own health. It can be debilitating. Having an advocate means that when you're stuck on the first thing your doctor said, your second set of ears is asking questions about everything that came after that. When you're overwhelmed by your diagnosis, your advocate is taking notes about the medication that will treat your new illness. Now, doctors can do better too. They can create shame-free environments where they make time for questions and assume we need more information than they think. But you, the patient, cannot control that. You can hope your doctor does this, but in the end, you can only take care of yourself and your loved ones. There are many tools we can use to improve our health literacy, but some of the best ones are simple. Ask questions and advocate for each other. Interrupt when you have questions or need more information. Take notes on everything that happens. Be the bossy patient. Take control of your health. Thank you.